We're going to take a look at how to use the Matrix Data Editor. So let's have a go. From the list view, go to File, Data, Edit. And what we're going to do is just click on the very first button here that says Modify Data or Create an Excel Data Template. And once we've done it, we can have a look at what the differences are between those two things. But let's crack on. So I've clicked the button, and what the system will do is make an Excel spreadsheet like this one that's got 3 different worksheets within one workbook. So it's landed immediately on benchmarks, but the next worksheet is postal votes, and the final one is live. So what are each of these for? Benchmarks, we can compare the data for today's current workshop with a previous time that we ran the same workshop with the same risk list. Now that's the key thing. It's got to be the same risks in the same order. Doesn't matter if you've added some extra ones at the end, but we need to be consistent on this for it to make any sense. So in my example, I've got some benchmark data set up for risk 1, and it says that the average score for risk 1 was 5 across the board. That's our benchmark. Let's put something in for risk 2, and we'll say on risk 2, we thought the impact was high, but the likelihood was a bit more moderate, and the control is okay but not great. So I've gone in with a vote of 4 for impact, a 3 for likelihood, and a 3 for control as my benchmarks. Obviously those could be to a decimal point, and in fact, why don't we do that with one of them? So we will say this one is a benchmark of 4.2. So we're going to, 4.4, why not? Hit the wrong button, but that still works. Okay, so this means that when we show our heat map, we can have a look at the movement. So have things got worse or stayed the same with each of the risks? So that's what the first one does. Let's have a look at postal votes. This is individual voting data. So the first was average scores on benchmarks. This is individual people. So in the example that I've got here, the postal vote data that I'd set up previously, so it's come out into this export because it was already there, is I only put in postal votes for risk 1, just the same as I did on the benchmarks. I'd only done the first one. So let's just add in something for risk 2. So let's say person 1 says for risk 2 impact, they will score that a 4. So that's person 1. Person 2, we'll say they said 4 as well. For likelihood, person 1 says the likelihood is only a 2. Person 2 says it's a 3. Now, if you've gathered this data through something like Microsoft Forms, so you know the people aren't coming, you've sent them a Forms link, they've all responded, you could just be pasting these in. You don't have to sit and type them in like I'm doing now. It is just Excel after all, so you can edit this however you want to. The key thing to remember is for every risk, it will include that risk for each assessment. So I've got risk 1 3 times because I've got impact, likelihood and control in my matrix process. If you had more, then you get more lines. And each column is an individual voter. So that is remote voter 1, so postal vote data 1, and this is my second postal vote person in here. So do put them in that order so that if you look at scatter plots and things, they're going to make sense. The live tab works exactly the same. Now, if you didn't have any live voting data, if we just flick back to here, I've got some live votes showing here. And in fact, in mine, because I've got it set up in the voting tab to look for live and postal, it would be combining the postal votes that I had with any live votes. If you are just starting afresh and you haven't got anything in here, then obviously the live and postal tabs in the Excel would be blank. But these averages come from the data that we can see that it exported. So this is the audit trail that goes with that particular matrix process. So live votes, we don't often go and change these, but let's say, for example, this person. So person with keypad number 2 says, I voted that a 4, and I really don't think I should have said 4 for likelihood because I think it's only a 3. So I want to change it. Without the rest of the group voting, we've just adapted that vote, and all we've got to do is import it. The other thing that you notice here is I had 3 people vote on the very first risk, but by the time we reached risk 2, somebody had perhaps left the room or was on the phone or who knows what, but they haven't voted. The person with keypad 3 did not vote on risk 2 for any of the assessments. So let's add their votes in. So let's say they're going to vote 5 for the impact of risk 2, 3 for the likelihood of risk 2, and finally their vote for control on risk 2. And they think the control is pretty good, which is why the likelihood is only sitting at a 3. So that's it. We've filled that in. So that is live voter 1, live voter 2, live voter 3. Moving back to the postals, we had 1, 2 people vote on a survey or by email or by phone or however you've done it. And we've also filled in some benchmark scores. We've only done risk 1 and risk 2. That's fine. We'll leave it at that. -2 for reasons that only make sense to the coders and math geniuses out there. Basically ignore those. You can leave those in. That will just not return a value for benchmark, so you don't need to do anything there, and it also wouldn't matter if you deleted that, but I'm just going to leave it as it is. Okay, so now that I'm happy that I've got all of my data done, if I come back to the window here, I'd moved across to there previously to check that it had live and postal, but let's just go back to external data. We used the first button last time. I'm going to use the second button this time. Import from Excel. Get a warning, which makes sense because we're about to overwrite live data, which is a big deal. But I know that I'm safe to do so, so I'll say yes. Then it warns me that it's going to overwrite my postal votes. And finally, it is going to overwrite my benchmark data. That's fine. I'm happy with what I've done. So it then lets me know which things it's done. I said yes on everything, so it's done all of them. Say OK, and it's going to update everything on the slide. So it's not caused any problems. And if we were to restart our process now, it would start from risk 3, item C, because we've already got live data in here. But so you'll spot that the scores and things have been adapted from what you saw at the beginning. To have a look at that in terms of what it looks like on a graph, let's go into here and plot the impact against the likelihood. And what we can see here is the scores, including the postal votes, including the edited data, will be sitting on here. And I've got benchmark switched on. So benchmark for A was sitting right up here. If you want to check that this has all worked okay, you can always just go back across to your Excel and see what you put in as the benchmark. And in fact, I did score 5s across the board for item A. So that's why it's sitting right up there. Item B, risk 2, was a little bit better performing. So let's have a look. That's going to sit below 4 on there. So let's have a quick check on here for risk 2, which is item B. And there's our benchmark for B. So you can check this yourself quite easily by putting in very exaggerated changes and things so that you can see what it's done. But essentially, that's how it works. To make sure that we really did end up with 3 votes for all of the assessments for item B, because you'll remember we only had 2 votes before we imported. To double check it, let's just press B so that we zone in on only B, and then we'll press B again, at which point we can see our scatter plot, and I've got 5 people on the scatter plot. So 1, 2, 3 and 2 sat right in where it happened to end up as an average. So that's my 2 postal votes and my 3 live votes. So everything there is looking good. So that is essentially how you use the data editor.